Some people are very confused about how the calculator can be viewed as a microscope on this last lab. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is what a microscope is in the first place. This video will help you understand what a microscope is.
Pliny the Elder, a thinker and philosopher of ancient Rome, wrote of a transparent crystal that was thick in the middle and tapered at its edges, that made objects look bigger if you peered through it. He even noticed that you could burn parchment or cloth if you directed rays of sun through it. Pliny was talking of none other than the magnifying glass. It wasn't until after the invention of spectacles that the idea of using lenses to inspect things that were very small was the microscope invented. The invention of the optical microscope transformed the field of science because it allowed people to examine the world in microscopic detail. All microscopes are basically carrying out three functions: magnify an object with the help of lenses, light up the specimen or object being examined, allow you to focus and make the details of this object visible.
Okay, so what does a microscope do? A microscope makes things that are too small for you to see appear to be larger. It allows you to zoom in onto things you cannot see directly. Keyword, to zoom in, is what a microscope does. Now, on our lab, which gave incredible explanations on what they were talking about, compared to zooming in with your graphing calculator to a microscope, because when you zoom in with your calculator, it makes something that's small appear larger, and that's what a microscope does. A microscope allows you to see things that appear small, making them appear larger by zooming in. So I'm going to use the calculator to show you what they were doing with their very first example here. And here's the formula. You don't have to worry about what cosine is. It doesn't matter. As long as we can find it on the calculator, I can make this graph just like they did using my calculator. So let me grab my calculator real quick. So there's the formula, and I'm going to make that formula on my calculator by hitting y equals. Since I have a fraction symbol, I'm going to need to use grouping symbols for my numerator and denominator. 2 plus x cubed, drop down, and the cosine button is right there of x, close that little parentheses, plus 1.5 raised to the x, come back down, oops, didn't do that, let's see, go to the end, hit a parentheses, then a division symbol, then another parentheses for my numerator, 2 plus x squared, close parentheses. Now, how to set a window on a calculator. You might forget this later, so there is this site called YouTube, which is a wonderful site. You can get all kinds of videos on it. So how to set the window on a TI-83. And I found several videos on that. Let's just find. So if you ever forget how to do this, again, there are several sites you can go to. Google, google.com, and youtube.com. you can get all kinds of questions answered. All you have to do is type in the question. And YouTube is really nice because they'll give you a video explaining how to do it. So, again, if you forget what I'm about to show you, please don't forget that there is a website called YouTube. So I'm going to just go ahead and do it on my calculator. There's a button on the calculator. Oops, let me bring up my lab. There's a button called Window. So if I want to set the window on my graph, this is all the graphing calculator commands. This is y equals where I put the formula in. This is window. This is a zoom button, and the zoom button can make your calculator act like a microscope, because a microscope allows you to zoom in. You can also use the window button. So let's take a look at this. The x minimum means smallest. And over here, the smallest x value is actually probably about -22, because it goes past. 20 is just the last one labeled, but clearly it goes past 20, so I'm going to say about -22. The largest one labeled is 30, but it actually looks like it probably goes to 40. So my x max, I'm going to put 40. They put a hash mark every 10 units. That's called the scale. You can put a 10 there. The y minimum looks like it actually stops truly at exactly -40. And the y max is clearly bigger than 100. So I'm going to guess it's about 105. And they put a little dash mark, which is called the scale, every 20 units. And now when I hit graph, it should look almost exactly like what you see right there. Now, this lab is asking us to talk about when x is 27. So there's a neat little button, trace, and I click 27 for 27 and hit enter, and that's my point. 27, 69.859043, which is exactly what we have here. 27, and the y value is 69.859043. We have that from our calculator. Now, like a microscope, and what does a microscope do? A microscope zooms in. We're going to change our x values. Now, notice when they zoom in, the x values 26, 27, 28, then I'm guessing this is probably at least 25, maybe smaller. So I'm going to do that with my window button. Window. The smallest x value, I believe, is probably, let's see, 25 or maybe even smaller, but I'm going to put 25 as my smallest x value, which is the minimum value that x can hold. 25. The maximum value is exactly 28. Now with this resolution, notice there's a hash mark for every 1 unit of x. That's called the scale. I will put a 1 there. And my smallest x value is not 68, but clearly at least down to 67. So I will put, for my y values, the lowest is 67. The biggest, which is called the maximum, is 76. The scale is by ones. And what's going to happen here is basically I'm changing the magnification of what I am viewing inside my window, and that's making my calculator act like a microscope, because I'm going to zoom into something that was small, and I'm going to make it appear through my viewing window bigger by hitting the enter button. By hitting the graph button. And as you can see, it looks just like what the text gave us. I have zoomed in with my calculator like a microscope zooms in. So my calculator now is very much like a microscope. In fact, unlike other microscopes, I can keep zooming in. And we will do the next zoom in for you. So, to zoom in, I need to know the minimum x value and the maximum x value, which it's given to us right here, the minimum. So I push my window, and the minimum x value is 26.8. And the maximum x value is 27.2. We're making this bigger. It's going to look bigger than it is because we're using our calculator like a microscope. Now notice these have a hash mark every 1/10 of an x value. So 0.1 is my x scale. My lowest y value is clearly smaller than 69.6. So I'm going to put 69 point, we'll call it 5. And the largest one is clearly bigger than 70.4, so I will call it 70.5. And the scale is every 0.2 units of y value, so 0.2. And when I hit graph, I should get the same picture as what the textbook is showing us. And I have zoomed in with my calculator, making my calculator behave like a microscope. Now, some terminology that some students seem to be a little confused about is the terms delta. Delta is a distance. D for the Greek alphabet is a delta. And so when we talk about a delta, I'd like to know the distance we're traveling. In this case, from 26.8 to 27.2, I can find that distance by taking the second x value and subtracting my first x value. x2 minus x1. So this window has a delta, or a distance, again, D for distance, a distance of 0.4 units from its minimum x value to its maximum x value. And how do I set that? I set the window with the button on the calculator called Window. And that is how you use your calculator like a microscope, because it allows you to zoom in and make small things look bigger.